The fallout from the heated HOA meeting reverberated through the neighborhood like a shockwave. Aiden's father, fuming with anger, stormed out of the building, his wife and children trailing behind him. "This is an outrage," he shouted, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "They're trying to bully us out of our own home." Karen, meanwhile, wore a triumphant smirk as she watched the family depart. "The writing's on the wall," she announced to her supporters. "It's only a matter of time before they're gone for good." But the Hendersons were not about to go down without a fight. That evening, Aiden and his father huddled over the kitchen table, mapping out a plan of action. "We need to take this to the next level," Aiden's father said, his eyes narrowed with determination. "I'm not going to let that woman and her cronies intimidate us out of our own home." Aiden nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "What do you have in mind?" "We're going to fight fire with fire," his father replied. "If Karen wants to wage a public battle, then that's exactly what we'll give her." Over the next few days, the family sprang into action. They reached out to local media outlets, sharing their side of the story and painting a picture of a neighborhood torn apart by Karen's relentless crusade. The coverage was swift and scathing, with reporters highlighting the family's long-standing roots in the community and the questionable tactics employed by the HOA. "This is a clear case of bullying and abuse of power," one news anchor declared, her voice tinged with outrage. "The Hendersons have done nothing wrong, and they shouldn't be punished for the whims of a single vindictive resident." Karen, watching the news reports with growing alarm, realized that the tide was turning against her. Her carefully crafted public image was starting to crumble, and she knew she had to act fast to regain control of the narrative. The next day, the neighborhood was abuzz with news of the confrontation. Whispers and speculation spread like wildfire, fueled by the grainy footage captured by the news crew. Karen wasted no time in making good on her threat. She marched into the local community center, a determined glint in her eye, and demanded a meeting with the Homeowners Association. "This family has been a menace to our peaceful community for far too long," she declared, slamming her fist on the table. "Their dog has been terrorizing my property, and now their son has assaulted me. I want them held accountable." The HOA members exchanged uncertain glances. "Mrs. Henderson, we certainly understand your concerns," one of them said tentatively. "But don't you think a neighborhood meeting would be a more constructive approach?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "A meeting?" she scoffed. "I've tried that. Now I want action. This family needs to be fined, or even evicted, for their blatant disregard of our community standards." The HOA members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, aware of the growing tension. Aiden's father, who had attended the meeting, spoke up. "This is an overreaction," he said firmly. "My family has done nothing wrong, and we have no intention of being bullied out of our home." Karen's lips curled into a cold smile. "We'll see about that," she said ominously. "I have evidence, witnesses, and the law on my side. You have until the end of the week to get your family under control, or else." With that, she turned and swept out of the room, leaving the stunned HOA members in her wake. As Aiden's father watched her go, a feeling of dread settled in the pit of his stomach. He knew that this was only the beginning of a long and bitter battle. Over the next few days, tension in the neighborhood reached a fever pitch. Karen wasted no time in putting her plan into action, plastering the community with flyers detailing her accusations against the family. "Dangerous dog terrorizes neighborhood," the flyers proclaimed in bold letters, urging residents to contact the HOA and demand action. Aiden and Emily's father tried to reason with their neighbors, but many of them were already swayed by Karen's aggressive campaign. Angry calls and complaints poured into the HOA office, putting immense pressure on the members to take decisive action. "This is getting out of hand," Aiden's father said, his brow furrowed with worry. "We need to find a way to defuse this situation before it spirals even further." Emily, her eyes red from crying, clung to her brother's arm. "I'm so scared, Aiden," she whispered. What if they make us move? Aiden pulled her into a tight hug. Don't worry, Em, he said, his voice low and determined. We're not going anywhere. I won't let that witch drive us out of our own home. But as the days passed, the family's situation only grew more dire. The HOA, feeling the weight of the community's demands, issued a formal warning to Aiden's father. If the dog is not removed from the property within the next 48 hours, we will have no choice but to levy a fine and begin eviction proceedings, the letter stated. Aiden's father slammed his fist on the kitchen table, his face a mask of fury. This is ridiculous, he exclaimed. Our dog has never caused any trouble. Karen is just using him as an excuse to get us out of this neighborhood. Emily began to sob, her small frame shaking with fear. Aiden wrapped a protective arm around her, his jaw set with determination. We're not going to let them do this, he said firmly. We're going to fight back, no matter what it takes. Aiden's words proved prophetic as the family launched a desperate counter-offensive against Karen's relentless campaign. First, they reached out to their closest neighbors, pleading their case and urging them to speak up at the upcoming HOA meeting. To their relief, several longtime residents agreed to vouch for the family's good standing and the dog's harmless nature. Karen's just stirring up trouble. One neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Wilkins, told the HOA members. I've lived here for 20 years, and I've never had a single issue with this family or their dog. But Karen was not about to back down without a fight. She marshaled her own supporters, filling the meeting room with scowling faces and angry demands. This is a clear violation of our community standards, she declared, her voice dripping with righteous indignation. That dog is a public nuisance, and I won't rest until it's removed from the premises. Aiden's father tried to interject, but Karen's supporters drowned him out with shouts and jeers. Throw them out, one man bellowed. They don't belong here. The HOA members looked on, their faces etched with uncertainty. Caught in the crossfire of the escalating conflict, they struggled to maintain order and find a fair resolution. Aiden, sitting in the back of the room, clenched his fists in frustration. This is such a load of crap, he muttered under his breath. We're not going down without a fight. As the meeting descended into chaos, Aiden knew that the battle lines had been drawn. The fate of his family's home now hung in the balance, and he was determined to do whatever it took to protect it. The fallout from the heated HOA meeting reverberated through the neighborhood like a shockwave. Aiden's father, fuming with anger, stormed out of the building, his wife and children trailing behind him. This is an outrage, he shouted, his voice carrying across the parking lot. They're trying to bully us out of our own home. Karen, meanwhile, wore a triumphant smirk as she watched the family depart. The writing's on the wall, she announced to her supporters. It's only a matter of time before they're gone for good. But the Hendersons were not about to go down without a fight. That evening, Aiden and his father huddled over the kitchen table, mapping out a plan of action. We need to take this to the next level, Aiden's father said, his eyes narrowed with determination. I'm not going to let that woman and her cronies intimidate us out of our own home. Aiden nodded, his jaw set with resolve. What do you have in mind? We're going to fight fire with fire, his father replied. If Karen wants to wage a public battle, then that's exactly what we'll give her. Over the next few days, the family sprang into action. They reached out to local media outlets, sharing their side of the story and painting a picture of a neighborhood torn apart by Karen's relentless crusade. The coverage was swift and scathing, with reporters highlighting the family's long-standing roots in the community and the questionable tactics employed by the HOA. This is a clear case of bullying and abuse of power, one news anchor declared, her voice tinged with outrage. The Hendersons have done nothing wrong, and they shouldn't be punished for the whims of a single vindictive resident. Karen, watching the news reports with growing alarm, realized that the tide was turning against her. Her carefully crafted public image was starting to crumble, and she knew she had to act fast to regain control of the narrative. Desperate to salvage her reputation, Karen launched a counterattack of her own, flooding the neighborhood with a new wave of flyers and social media posts. "Dangerous dog threatens families," the flyers proclaimed, accompanied by an unflattering photo of the Hendersons' beloved pet. "HOA fails to protect residents." The posts on local community groups were even more scathing, painting the Hendersons as irresponsible pet owners who cared more about their own comfort than the safety of their neighbors. "This family has shown a complete disregard for our community standards," Karen wrote, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "They refuse to take responsibility for their aggressive dog, and now they're trying to play the victim. Well, I won't stand for it." The backlash was swift and harsh. Neighbors who had previously been on the fence suddenly found themselves swept up in Karen's crusade, bombarding the HOA with angry calls and emails. "Something has to be done about this dog," one resident demanded. "It's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt." Aiden's father watched the growing storm with a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. "They're turning the whole neighborhood against us," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. Emily, her eyes red from crying, clung to her brother's arm. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Aiden's jaw tightened with determination. "We're not going to let them win," he said, his voice low and fierce. "We're going to fight back, no matter what it takes." As the conflict escalated, the Hendersons realized that they were fighting a losing battle. Karen's relentless campaign had succeeded in turning the majority of the neighborhood against them, and the HOA seemed increasingly unwilling to stand up to her demands. Facing the very real prospect of being evicted from their home, the family decided to take a bold and desperate step. They reached out to a local advocacy group, seeking help in navigating the legal minefield that had enveloped their lives. "This is a clear case of harassment and abuse of power," the group's lawyer told them, his brow furrowed with concern. "We'll do everything in our power to protect your rights and hold the HOA accountable." Armed with the lawyer's guidance, the Hendersons prepared to make a final stand. They attended the next HOA meeting, their expressions grim and determined. "We're not going to let you push us out of our own home," Aiden's father declared, his voice ringing out across the tense silence. "This is our community too, and we have the same rights as everyone else." Karen, her lips curled into a sneer, leaned forward in her seat. "Your rights don't extend to endangering the safety of your neighbors," she spat. The lawyer stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "Mrs. Henderson, your constant harassment and baseless accusations have crossed the line," he said, his tone firm and authoritative. "If you continue down this path, we will have no choice but to take legal action." Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment, something akin to fear flickered across her features. The other HOA members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly aware of the precarious position they had been placed in. As the meeting descended into a tense standoff, the Hendersons knew that the fate of their family's future hung in the balance. They had come too far to give up now, and they were determined to fight for their home until the very end. The final showdown between the Hendersons and Karen unfolded in a dramatic and unexpected way. As the HOA meeting reached a fever pitch, with both sides trading accusations and ultimatums, a new player entered the fray, the local news media. Drawn by the escalating conflict, a team of reporters and cameramen had descended upon the community center, eager to capture the latest developments in the ongoing saga. When Karen spotted the cameras, her eyes widened with a mixture of triumph and apprehension. She seized the opportunity, stepping forward and launching into a scathing tirade against the Hendersons. "This family has shown a complete disregard for our community standards," she declared, her voice carrying across the room. "Their dog is a menace, and they refuse to take responsibility for its actions. I won't rest until they are held accountable." But as Karen continued her impassioned rant, the camera crew began to shift uncomfortably. Suddenly, one of the reporters stepped forward, a determined look on her face. "Mrs. Henderson, We've been investigating this situation, and it appears that your accusations against the Hendersons may not be entirely accurate, she said, her voice calm and measured. Karen's face contorted with rage. What are you talking about? She demanded. The reporter held up a stack of documents. We've obtained evidence that shows your complaints about the Hendersons' dog were fabricated, and that you've been orchestrating a campaign of harassment and intimidation against this family, she explained. The room erupted into stunned silence as the gravity of the reporter's words sank in. Aiden's father stared at Karen, his expression a mixture of relief and triumph. You see, he said, his voice steady. We've been telling the truth all along. This was never about our dog. It was about your own personal vendetta against our family. Karen, her face flushed with humiliation, opened and closed her mouth, unable to form a coherent response. The HOA members, realizing the depth of their own complicity, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. In the end, it was a moment of karmic justice, a triumph of truth over the relentless pursuit of power and control. The Hendersons had emerged victorious, their home and their family secured, while Karen's carefully constructed facade had crumbled in the face of unwavering determination and a relentless search for the truth.